naturally question yourself, am I good at this? Am I good enough to take that leadership role? So be strategic and be open to letting new people enter into your space. Strategic means intentional. You are nurturing relationships that help you grow, stretch, and lead. Because great networking is also about being a great listener. I invited myself by offering value.
Thanks for joining me. And today we have with us in the studio none other than Anna Radulovski. Did I pronounce it correctly, Anna?
It was good. I appreciate the effort, yeah.
And she is the founder, global CEO, WomenTech Network, and Chief inTech Summit. Now, Anna has spoken in Fortune 50 boardrooms and on global stages. As a trusted startup mentor and angel investor, she has supported over 100 early stage founders, guiding them in strategy, growth, and leadership development. She also serves on the boards of Coding Girls and Executive Women in Tech and is a director at the Founder Institute, where she actively mentors the next generation of global tech leaders. And she joins us today on the Payal Nanjiani Leadership Podcast to talk about how women can build strategic network. Anna, welcome to the podcast. It is such an honor to have you here with us.
Thanks, Payal, and thanks for inviting me. Excited to be here today.
And you have done so much in your career, and I have not even read 1/4 of it. So, if you had to start to tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this field where, I read you have been impacting millions of women around the world. So, tell us what brought you to where you are.
Yeah, that's a really great question. When I think about it, it all started with one question. When I became curious about the very fact that there's so few women in technology.
Mm-hmm.
You go out there to a tech meetup, to a tech conference, in person, virtual, and you see that it is still so many men, or the majority of our men that are speaking in tech, that are on the main stages, on the covers of prominent media outlets. And I started to wonder, why is that so? Aren't women interested in tech? Where does the problem start? And I started from the very beginning. I started with girls because I wanted to understand if girls are interested in technology. Because from early ages, we know that it all starts to shape, right? When, for example, boys are given Lego sets and encouraged to be bold and brave, and girls are given Barbies and dolls and said you need to be nice and pretty, and it all shapes. I don't say that all the parents do that, but that's just the narrative that's been out there for so long. And I do want to believe that right now we're in the stage where more parents are becoming aware of how those words can shape the behaviors, the interests, and the outcomes of their kids. And as I was starting with the Coding Girls, we started with one workshop that turned into two, and then spiraled into having also events. And I saw how girls were excited about coding, about in that particular case, it was a Scratch workshop. I thought, well, that must be not that. That must be the case that I wanted to talk actually to women in technology and to understand what are their challenges and where does the challenge start, kind of. And as we were having also meetups and conversations, I realized that when women are in the workplace, they need support, and that very often they are the only one in the room, and it's so difficult. You start to naturally question yourself, am I good at this? Am I good enough to take that leadership role, and so on and so forth. And when you see other women who maybe navigated the challenge that you are going through right now, you realize, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not imagining this. This happens. This happened to so many women out there. And I can probably get through this with the right support, with tools, with strategies, with tips from other leaders. And I realized that we can do something big. And I did not initially plan to like scale globally. I guess I always had this vision, but it's people who started to reach out to me and started to kind of even give me these ideas, because when they saw I was doing, people in my network, the very beginning when I didn't have this huge network like we have now. We have over 150,000 members right now in our community worldwide in 179 countries. But when I was starting out, I had I would say, not so big network, but it was a supportive network. So when they saw that I was doing something interesting, they started to reach out and say, can we like launch a chapter in our country? I was like, this is interesting. And I was like, okay, how can we do it? Why do we need to limit ourselves? And we started to scale, and we started to roll out and to think actually globally, because there is no country in the world that I would say there are some countries that are doing better. There are some countries that are getting there, but in reality, the percentage of women in technology is still not there yet. It's still low.
Right. But were you always a type of a person who was always interested in technology?
Well, that's a really great question. I think from the very early age, I was interested in so many things, and I was this person who was good at so many things. And I was good at languages. At a certain point, I wanted to pursue law because I really like the idea that you can help people in a very powerful way, that you can, I guess, in a way, bring justice. That was also important to me, and I had so many interests. Here's the thing. No one in my childhood was prominently telling me and positioning technology as a career. That's why until the later stage, I was not like necessarily seeing myself. And that was one of the reasons when we were starting with coding girls, I didn't want girls to get excited about technology, to show them that this is a possibility. And that's, I think it's probably changing right now with generation alpha, with generation beta, right? Those are digital natives and are going to be AI natives, right? The newest generation. And those are different. And that's completely different from where I was at. But if someone would have told me years back, you can build incredible things, you can change people's lives, you can build products that help people. I think if you put it from this perspective, and if you have really a culture that is supportive, when you have a company that has a transparent path to promotion, to help you get into leadership role, to help everyone get into leadership roles, not just people who look like leaders at the top. You know what I mean? So in this regards, I would say there's lots of awareness right now happening at WomenTech Network, at other organizations, at different companies who have their leaders also passionate about building inclusive teams. So there is lots of things that have been done in comparison to a decade ago, or when I was considering which career I'm going to pursue, etc.
Okay. And just digging into the topic that we are today on, I loved how you said, sometime back when we were speaking of this podcast, that how women can build their strategic network. I have seen that women usually shy away from building their own network, not for any other reason, but because there's so much that takes up at home, so much that takes up from work. What is your thought on that when it comes to women building their network?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I see from my latest conversations, there are different conversations out there that I've had throughout the years, but one of the latest conversations that comes to mind to me right now, one executive, she shared that I dedicated so much to this role. I invested everything I could. It worked out, but she said, I realized that I wasn't building my network. Like I built my network around this job. I am really good at my job. I'm now bringing more women also to my team. But I realized when I look around, that's it. That's my network. And I haven't been intentionally and strategically investing time into networking. I would say one of the biggest observation that I'm seeing is that women start to network only when they change jobs, or they it can really feel frustrating in a way because you desperately might need another role, or you start to network and it just takes much more time than you expect. And here's the thing, you do want to have already a network in place who you support relationships with before you need a favor, like someone to position you for a role, someone to connect you with another company. You want to be known as someone who has a strong personal brand with expertise on certain topic. And you want to have that network before you need anything. And what I'm observing that very often, women would just start doing that when they need a job, and that's it. And I think that's the connection, perhaps, networking for a job or so. Network, it needs to have a purpose, right? Purpose could be a job, but I think it can be really frustrating when you go out to an event and you don't have a purpose, and then it can be really, really awkward because you don't know what you're doing there. So it's about knowing what brings you here. Are you here to learn? Are you here to connect with certain people to grow your network? Are you here for another reason? The host, they invited you and you came here to have a great time. That could be everything, but be open, be strategic, and be open to letting new people enter into your space that could help you grow, and in a way you can help them too.
That is true. And a lot of times what happens is, in the age in which we are, like you said, the technological age, we are so much on social media. We try to build a lot of networking just online, on LinkedIn or something. And we keep those, what I call as stored contacts. What is the difference between consciously building a network versus having this large numbers of stored contacts on LinkedIn?
That's a really good distinction. I would give it here like a very simple explanation. If you think about a large network, it's like having a phone book. And a strategic network is having people who would actually answer your call, advocate for you, challenge you to grow, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about the quantity. Quantity can matter. Like we do have a huge network, but it's also about quality. For example, ask, do I have peers I can learn from? Do I have someone I'd call before negotiating a raise, for example, right? Do I have someone in a different function or industry who stretches my thinking, who can challenge me in other ways? And think about it like strategic means intentional. You are nurturing relationships that help you grow, stretch, and lead. And that makes a difference. When you think from this perspective, do I have people, and they don't have to be your close friends, by the way, like this, I mean, we don't want to necessarily, they just like your work friends in a way, or people who you met in person you spoke on a panel, you met at a conference, you connected at maybe even internal event. Today they work for your company, tomorrow they work at another company. That's just how things are. And here you are. So I think it's about finding those loops where you can invite people in for a conversation, explain the value you can bring, and learn about them as well. Very often, one of the best ways for me is to think of how to grow your network, is to think about the ways you can help people. Like you see someone out there on LinkedIn posting, I'm looking to speak on a podcast. And I could take you, Payal, for example. Could take other podcasts and say, hey, this is a great podcast. Might be it might be interesting for you, right?
Mm.
Or someone is saying, I'm looking for a co-founder, or I am doing this, so I'm doing that, or something else. Think of the ways you can be helpful, again,
Mm.
strategically, right? You need to be absolutely conscious about your time, be
Right.
precious with your time. But I'm sure when you do like time audit, you will find those time wasters that you have,
Oh,
and
yes.
then thinking of how you actually can dedicate 30 minutes a day to quality comments on LinkedIn, to catching up, maybe setting up different catch up calls or actually doing the catch ups, and thinking about leveraging all the opportunities out there, or create the opportunities for
Mm.
you, also virtually.
That's right.
I think there is no.
You said something early on that it's not necessary that you have to be around women or build that network, but that usually becomes the comfort zone. Because usually what happens is we, in an industry where most of the time we see a lot of men at networking events or conferences, and women, they shy away from, they feel uncomfortable making those approaches and about speaking to other people. So, what would you say about this? What are some of the ways women can overcome this type of a feeling and actually build great network and connections around, not only with their women, women around, but with everybody?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really great point. And all the tips that I shared are applicable for everyone.
Mm.
From my experience, network is something that you build, something that you practice, like as
Mm.
a muscle. You go day one, you go to a gym, you're not good at it, right? Like
Yeah.
no one is like naturally, I guess, really an expert. So think about it in this way. It's neither you or me, Pyle, were born as expert networkers. Even if we think about someone who is outgoing, doesn't automate, or someone who is an extrovert, doesn't
Mm.
automatically make them a great networker, because great networking is also about being a great listener. It's
Mm.
about asking questions that make people
Yeah.
talk about themselves. I
Mm.
think that everyone thinks, I don't mean that you don't need to have your elevator pitch, but many people think networking is about saying something smart,
Yeah.
like about being charismatic,
Yeah.
but in reality,
Mm.
I remember one particular event.
Mm.
There was a prevailing majority of men at that event. There are so many events out there, right? And I didn't think that I was the youngest in that room. I didn't think that I was the one of the few women out there. I
Mm.
just thought this is my opportunity to connect with those people who have can make influential decisions, and now I'm going to use it. And here's how I'm going to use it. I'm going to ask them questions. So instead of thinking, how can I make myself interesting to them,
Mm.
I actually asked them questions where they were talking about themselves, right?
Right.
And it was a very exclusive event. They didn't question for a bit my presence because I made myself comfortable at that event. I
Mm.
didn't think that I don't belong there. I didn't think that, I guess, I know the list, or what I know, what I don't know. I was just thinking, how can I make use of this opportunity that is given to me? This is a
Mm.
great opportunity. How can I learn from those people? How can I connect with these people?
Yeah.
How can I let them talk about themselves and we have an interesting conversation, right?
Yeah.
So, my tip here, to your point, is the more you practice, the stronger and more natural it becomes
Mm.
networking. And yes, it might be, you might feel awkward at first, and it can be only transactional if you let it be transactional. You
Mm.
have the power to make it meaningful. So start by being genuinely interested about the other person. Listen, ask thoughtful questions, and look for shared purpose.
Nice. I like the thing that listen and have the shared purpose. And you have been, I think listening is something which it's for everyone, like you said, it's just not for the women. But you have been helping women to grow. You have been hosting so many women tech conferences. In your experience, what have you observed? What are some of the most common mistakes that women make while they are trying to build their network?
Yeah, I think there are a few. I will focus on three most
Okay.
common. So number one is taking too little time or even space physically to
Mm.
introduce themselves. For example, saying something like, "Oh, I'm just a software engineer," or "I run a tech startup." And I always tell women, take your time to introduce yourself.
Mm.
Literally, physically. Take that time. You are not in a rush. You don't need to mumble it for 2 seconds what you're doing.
Yeah.
And see it not as a bragging, not as a taking up space literally and not giving a chance for others to talk, but
Mm.
by informing others about the value you bring to the table. It's also
Okay.
your body language matters, your tone of
Yes.
voice matters, everything matters. But as minimum as it, take your time to explain what is it that you're doing. Have you been at an event when someone just says, "I run a tech company," or
Mm.
I'm building this, I'm doing that, and you just didn't get what that person is doing? Isn't that a way to just kind of mess up this opportunity? Or you take your time, that's where you need to take your time to
Mm.
prepare your pitch, your elevator pitch. What is that that you're doing? Who do you help? And the value that you bring to the table. That is
Mm.
so important. And then you want to be also genuinely interested in, if you don't want to just monopolize the space talking about yourself, you do that introduction,
Yeah.
make a short pause, and then let others process it, right? When I say pause, it's like 3 to 7 minutes, seconds max, unless someone would interrupt you. Of course, I don't want to allow that.
Mhm.
And then just let you know, a natural conversation continue. Number two, a very common mistake is waiting to be invited. Women tend to think that we need to earn
Ah,
our seat at the table,
yeah.
right? Instead of realizing that you can literally pull up your own chair. What do
Mm.
I mean by that? Some of the best events and opportunities I've been a part to, I didn't wait for an invitation. If I
Mm.
wait for an invitation, I probably would be waiting until this day. So
Mm.
here's what I did. I invited myself by offering value,
Mm.
by explaining how I can contribute, how I can bring value to this conversation, and of course, creating space instead of waiting for it.
Mm.
So don't wait for the opportunities, create them. You see an event you want to attend, write them. There is a
Yeah.
possibility. Write them how you can partner with them. Write them how you can support them. If you get like a rejection, at least you tried. You can say, "Hey, what would it take for me to get into the next edition, etc.?
Mm.
How can I stay informed about the next edition, etc., etc.?" You need to show interest and to be proactive. Otherwise, if you just wait to be invited, and
Mm.
especially if you don't have a very strong personal brand,
Mm.
no one would even know about you. How they're supposed to find you? How they're
Yeah.
supposed to know that you're
Correct.
interested in
Yeah.
this?
True.
And then number three, we already discussed for it, and I think this is a very strong one, is networking only when you're looking for a new role.
Mm. Yeah. A lot of people
I don't
miss it.
know. Yeah. You absolutely should reach out to your network when you look for a new role, but
Mm.
they already should know about you, your experience, expertise much earlier. That's where your personal brand comes in the game, right?
Mm.
When you reach out to them and they already know that you, for example, Payal, led this podcast,
Mm.
interviewed successful executives, entrepreneurs, CEOs, right? They know about your expertise. They know
Mm.
what you bring to the table. So this is, you're not starting from zero. You already
Right.
have a personal brand, even if you're looking for the job and you want to be like still in a way position yourself as where you can bring the most, where you can make the most impact. So these are
True.
the three
Of those
common things,
points.
like really taking too little time or space to introduce yourself,
Yes.
waiting to be invited, and only networking when you need something,
Yes. I think this is so
especially when
spot
it comes to
on.
changing roles.
Very spot on, Anna. And I'm getting so excited in this conversation because you're talking like really something which is above what we do in general. Now, as we are building this network, we also have to sustain that network. We have to, make sure that that network is growing, and not just growing, but whoever we have connected with, we need to nurture them. We need to keep in touch with them. How does one do that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. How to update your network, right,
Yeah.
about what you're doing. Well, one of the platforms that I use, actually a couple of things. One of the platforms is LinkedIn. So you want to be sharing not just when you receive an award or when you got featured somewhere. Share about those, absolutely, especially if this can be helpful. For example, you could say, I won this award. This is what I learned, right? Or this is how you can apply for it too, or something like that. So be really helpful when you also share about your achievements. If you have a newsletter, or if you don't have a newsletter, think about starting a newsletter to update your network about all the things that you are doing, where you're speaking, what are the opportunities, like maybe to work with you, right? Or if you have if you have any channel where you can amplify their impact, right? Be it a podcast or a conference, summit, etc., where they might want to get involved. So creating those opportunities is really important. For example, at WomenTech Network, we have our weekly newsletter. So every single week, my team is working really hard to prepare this newsletter. It's a community newsletter. We also have other dedicated newsletter, but that's how our community can stay updated about all the exciting opportunities for them, all the latest jobs, speaking opportunities, who is speaking at our upcoming events, webinars, conferences, etc. So thinking again from the perspective of value, whatever you do, the way you update, how can, or for example, you could say, I saw this article about biotech. I noticed that you started now a biotech company. This might be interesting for you. Or you just announced, again, like I mentioned this earlier, be really, when you go out there on LinkedIn, for example, think of really being interested in other people's lives and thinking of how you can help them. And then it becomes really natural, right? Or for example, you are headed to a conference and you're like, if you met this person there, you can write them and say, hey, I'm headed to LA Tech Week. Are you going to be there? It was so nice to meet you last time. I was thinking that we should connect and grab some coffee, right? So think of different, more like natural opportunities to connect. Or if you were thinking about a person, I was like, I was thinking about you. I'm organizing this webinar. Like, I would really love to have you. I just saw this post you shared earlier. This resonated so much. Or listened to this podcast, or that book you mentioned. It was so good. So you want to let people know how they impacted you. And that also works really well. For example, someone gives you an advice, your mentor, right? And then you apply that advice. Imagine it worked out, and you should absolutely write them and say something. Remember, you advised me to take that role. Oh my God, they actually really want to hire me. I'm like so excited. I'm so glad I listened to you, like stuff like that. You want to let people know how they impacted your life. And instead of thinking of those artificial reasons, I guess, think just in a very human way, how you can use those and update your network in a way that feels natural, and you are very likely to receive a response.
I think this is absolutely great. Anna, you have such great points, and I know we can have this conversation for so long. But if you had to give one piece of biggest advice to the listeners out there, especially the women listeners, what would your advice be?
Wow, that's a very profound question. I would say that learn to say no, right? That's so important. Boundaries matter. But also learn to say yes. Learn to say yes, because saying yes can be so powerful too. And I'm in the context of strategic networking. For example, saying yes to that coffee chat you're not sure about, saying yes to attending that panel, even if you feel underqualified, saying yes to introducing two people that might help each other grow. Because strategic networking, they are building those small intentional yeses. Yes to showing up, yes to staying curious, yes to offering value without
Yeah.
expecting anything in return right away, right? And over time, you will see that those yeses turn into trust, and trust turns into opportunity. And as you grow in your career, this is so important. As you grow in your career, networking doesn't become less important. It becomes more intentional, right? And some of those early connections at events, they can even turn into strong friendship. They turned for me, and I think that's beautiful. We should think about those opportunities, not just to meet people, to do some business together, because as a matter of fact, they can become very close people in your network, in your personal life as well. And I think it's a
So
bonus.
good. I know, isn't it? And I mean, that's the best when your networking becomes, a personal bond between you. So that's great. Thank you so much, Anna. You've taken the time to be on this podcast and share your insights and experience. It's such an honor to have you here with us.
Absolutely, the pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Thank you. And this one's for our listeners. This is Anna and Payal wishing you loads of success in your career life. God bless.